Hey, it's me, Big P, and I wanted to yap about my plans for the League Start build that I'm planning on. It's Crackling Lance Totems with Crackling Lance of Disintegration. Why Crackling Lance? The Ball Lightning Totem got nerfed, so there, if you want to do Lightning Spell Totem stuff, if you're kind of looking for stuff, I think it's a good fit. It would kind of be similar to Divine Ire Totems in playstyle, which was pretty good. It's going to have less AoE, but definitely more cast speed, immediacy of damage. I think the totem builds are actually pretty solid. I tried EA totems last league and I liked it as a starter, but the delay in damage was kind of and that's kind of the problem with Divine Ire totems too. Unless you get a lot of cast speed. Cast speed definitely helps here too, but it's probably going to be fun, and worst comes to worst, I can just re-roll into probably a Archmage version of Crackling Lance. The new Archmage changes that let you not need to scale cast mana cost, rather make it kind of interesting for self-cast. I think I always thought it was kind of not that good for Archmage setups because you're casting it so much, it just consumes a lot of mana. It still might be the case, but anyway, I think totems will be a cool core concept to try and just see how it goes. I'm way too lazy. I'm not going to do a leveling video. I'm not even going to practice really League Start, so progress will probably be slow, and it's definitely not a mapper by any means, but I want something that I can kind of build out slowly and kind of try a different style of League Start build, League Start approach. Do maybe destructive play farming, try and farm the tier 7 teams efficiently enough. It's probably, at least for a couple weeks, going to be some good money there, so that's what I want to try. And normally I certainly will set up a mapper after this, so the playstyle is definitely not going to be for everyone, but I could highly recommend self-casting if you've never tried Crackling Lance as a skill. And yeah, as a totem, it's going to be pretty cool. I just haven't done totems in a while, certainly not as Hyro. I'll go over the skills real quick. Crackling Lance, these are the links. You can replace them with the Awakened version of each one, or Awakened Ellie Focus if you're really getting to the ceiling of investment. Spell Totem, you don't need to link if you are using Soul Mantle as your chest piece. And yeah, the only reason that you would probably consider Crackling Lance now is because Crackling Lance of Disintegration does not have Intensify built in. Basically, the way this trans skill gem works is it just does the laser beam version that's usually at the max intensify stacks, so you have a huge chance to, well, really it's a max shock effect is really going to be the most interesting thing here, as well as a higher effectiveness of added damage, and I think it also has higher base damage as well. It's pretty much just a straight buff, and the only reason that you would consider it really over a self-cast build, if you're just using base Crackling Lance, you probably would want to self-cast it because of how Intensify works, but you don't need to with this. It's pretty important to the build, I would say, to get the Transfigured skill gem for this. So, but I don't mind suboptimally trying some other spells in the totems. I don't really care. I'll try the Crackling Lance just to see, but you will be losing out on damage without going for that skill gem. Just make a note of it. Speaking of damage, Arcane Cloak would be your self-cast buff. Normally you'd put it on left click. That doesn't really exist anymore, so you can automate it if you want. This is how you proc a big Arcane Surge with a nice big duration and stuff, and I think it's better than Sigil of Power because you can just pop it and then run around and have that effective damage. You could also use Sigil of Power. I might not, honestly, if you choose to just 3-link this in your wand or your shield. You could definitely get away with not using Sigil of Power, but it is some potential damage. You're not really spending that much mana on a build like this, so unless you Arcane Cloak after the Sigil of Power, but I don't know. It's kind of clunky. I wanted to minimize rotation and stuff like that, and honestly max out QOL. Speaking of which, the build that does go Mind Over Matter potentially, if you're into that sort of stuff, so you can just take advantage of all the natural mana that Hyro gets, and you're in a good part of the tree that has good mana stuff, so you could just use Eternal Blessing to not reserve any mana and just run that as your I'm not sure if I'm going to do this. I see a lot of people last league were running this. The few people who did the build like this were doing it. I guess I could do a little bit more research and see what would be the best. I'll probably just experiment and decide, you know, maybe what to do on the fly, depending on my chess piece and whatever. But Flame Dash is going to be the move skill, I guess. If you do want to go for more traditional reservations, and, you know, you can spec into that in the tree, the usual nodes. You are right next to the stuff here that you normally would, that reservation efficiency, and not that far from that one too. You can spec out this tree is actually pretty dense. I like that it doesn't have a lot of travel nodes. Usually my trees have a decent bit of travel nodes, and it's only really this last chunk here. I do have some leveling trees in this POV that I'll set up. This would be about level 68. This would be going into maps. If you do definitely want to have that totem set up by the time you're finishing the campaign, it's going to make the bosses a lot easier to deal with. I think that's a big thing. If the earlier you swap into totems, the better time you'll have with bosses. This would be the earliest elemental overload setup you do here, and then this will, you swap the totems. And then yeah, this would be like a final end game tree that you can go double clusters. There's really good totem clusters, I think, as well as mana / lightning clusters. Definitely a big place you can invest into the build and scoop up the damage while also boosting survivability. But back to the skills. Clarity helps for mana regen, although I guess you'd rather run vitality if you're really reserving stuff. I'm not sure. And maybe even precision as well. Wrath and determination are the big main ones. Other than zealotry, you can mix and match, you know, go full softcore if you want. Determination is just to fill up some armor. So you know, there's not a lot. Your hit pool is just going to be hybrid life, ES, and mana, you know, just as much of that as possible. And then Herald Device would help with clear probably, and add a chunk of damage to the Crackling Lance, because that may be a problem depending on your cast speed and the targeting, although I think the auto targeting on the totems is good enough that it shouldn't really matter. This build really doesn't have a lot of socket pressure, so if you want, you can fit in this minion setup. I don't usually do this, but I think I'm gonna mess with some of the new stuff in a Race Spectre setup, unless it really just gets too annoying. And then Lightning Golem you can also put in, but like, honestly, I might automate this. Like, I don't know if that's even a thing you can do, but yeah, probably not for the Spectres. You probably raise those separately, but again, I don't really know what I'm doing here. Not a lot of socket breaker. You can experiment with whatever you want, but you are Ancestral Bond on the tree. Once you're that, you cannot deal damage with skills yourself, so do keep that in mind. Oh, I guess curses or something I didn't really go over, so those would really be conductivity. You can go into a multi-curse setup. Actually, a lot of endgame trees do that, but for a league start scenario, I don't think that's really going to be what I'm doing. And honestly, some of the other setups, not really what I'm interested in. That would probably bring us to our items. This is at least just like really basic item framework of uniques you can go for. Probably in order, it would be the classic combo for totem spell builds of Soul Mantle and Akikazaru or 2. I think it has 60 reduce effect now, so you can like make that up somewhere else on the tree or on jewels. It might still roll on flasks, or you could just not do that. That's might be what I'm gonna try and get away with. And then there's other rings you can use to scale up and stuff like that, but just Kikazaru and Soul Mantle are probably good core build to aim for if you are interested in spell totems at all. And then for lightning cast speed and stuff like that, a lot of flat damage, a lot of cast speed, and hinders nearby enemies. So it's just so good that you would get it twice. This is like usually a couple chaos singularity. The scepter definitely get to level with, and will get you into and through plenty of maps. As far as scaling further, Replica Heat Shiver you can probably snipe, and that can get you a real big chunk of damage if you do have, you know, enough it's rounding out resistances in the rear slots. You know, you can get away with this, and it will give you a decent bit of extra cold damage per 2% shock effect. The Crackling Lance does scale shock effect, so it's a pretty cool idea. I saw a couple of builds using it last league. Definitely going to try that. And then Replica Dragonfang's Flight, probably not going to be super cheap, but not super expensive either for Crackling Lance, unless like a lot of people pick up Crackling Lances. I think it's a pretty underrated skill. I've been self-casting it for quite some time, and I think it's going to be actually even better than Totems, or with Totems rather, because the aiming is just going to be amazing. I hope it's going to be deleting bosses like that, and you know, Replica Dragon Fang. Flat damage really does kind of skyrocket on these higher levels for the elemental spells. And yeah, that's about it. I don't really have much else to say, because I haven't really practiced Path of Exile. I haven't been playing consistently, and it's gonna feel really weird and different going into a league after Affliction, but I'm hoping that this new endgame framework, having this to kind of back up the endgame, will help me kind of feel it out better than a mapper would, and then we will see what else happens. I don't know about the league itself. Seems like it's going to be pretty divisive, so hopefully I'll make a cool build or two and then play BPL and then play one of the other 100 games that come out. So thank you for watching my video over one of the 100 other videos, and I will see you this weekend. I'll be streaming most whenever I feel like it, when I'm blasting through maps and stuff with my laser beam blasts. See ya.